Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is mindset, and the title is Get Bitter or Get Better. So you can probably guess where we're going with this. But in our lives, something or someone will always come up that adds like some negativity or challenge or stress, or there's just bad stuff that happens as a normal part of life. And it doesn't often, well, sometimes it's a consequence of our own actions, and sometimes it's not. So, in those moments, whenever we didn't feel like it was due to our own fault, those moments of hardship can be hard to accept. And in those ones, we can have trouble sometimes moving on. We kind of think to ourselves, like, oh, this isn't fair, or I didn't deserve this, or like, why me? And sometimes we're all human, so sometimes we'll look and see maybe other people in our life who aren't living as well as we feel, as we are, and we're like, why the heck did this happen to me? Why didn't it happen to them? They're the ones who do da 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 da, and I don't do that. So why did this come to me? Why did this happen to me? And we have those kind of feelings, and sometimes we never move past them. And I think that's the hardest ones for us to accept and learn how to move past are the ones that we didn't feel like we deserve. So, like, if I kind of do my own actions and I do something wrong and there's a consequence for it, we can at least understand it. So it doesn't mean we're happy about it, but we can at least understand why we felt like it happened. So when something happens to us that we didn't think was fair, we didn't think we deserved, that's whenever we can get stuck in this trap of becoming bitter. So again, we kind of think to ourselves is, we didn't do anything to cause this, so why do I have to deal with it? And therefore we try to sometimes not deal with it. So we choose to do nothing. And a choice to do nothing is still a choice. It's a choice of being bitter. Those are pretty much, I'm going to simplify this for the purpose of the podcast and say that those are pretty much the two choices we have, is we can either get bitter about it, and where we kind of let it linger over us, we let it hurt us, we cause it to we let it shut us down, and we let it make us only see the negatives in life. So once we get kind of hurt once, now all we can see is the hurts. Everything that comes our way, we're waiting for the next, ball to drop, as they say. So we never kind of allow ourselves to be happy, or if we do, it's a fake temporary happy, and we're just waiting for the next time to be depressed, or the next time we're going to get hurt, or the next time something falls apart. And we don't enjoy the present moment. We fear our future due to the fear of the past. And we kind of get ourselves wrapped up in that process. And it can shut us down, it can slow us down. And even if we try to move forward in life, but we're always, fearing the negatives, we're always kind of still wondering why it happened, we're still not accepting that it happened. We can move forward, but we are still weighed down. So we're not living to our best, we're not experiencing our best, we're not happy. And a lot of that comes from us being bitter. So what we have to do in order to be able to move forward freely, be able to move forward in a happy state and be our best, and not only for ourselves but for the people around us, to give the best that we can to the people around us, the people we love, is to choose to not be bitter but choose to be better. And this is definitely going to come across as oversimplifying, but I want to give some examples and some things that might help us kind of see how other people have kind of went through this process. So the part about getting better is you don't have to accept fault for what happened. So sometimes things happen to us that truly weren't our fault. We truly didn't deserve, We were just at the wrong place at the wrong time, kind of thing. It wasn't anything in our actions or anything about our character that caused this thing to happen. It was just chance luck of life. And so often we search for fault. Like, why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? Or da 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 da. Whenever there's really no fault to it. It just is. And we have to accept that there is no fault sometimes. Or if somebody does something to us, say someone else hurt you. It might be their fault that they hurt you, but it's still your hurt to have to deal with. So people often don't change, or they don't change until they reach a breaking point, which will be far after your breaking point. So you are probably one of the stepping stones on the way to their breaking point. So even if they change, it still doesn't take the hurt away. So even if somebody is remorseful, it doesn't take the hurt away. If somebody, killed a family member of yours, but then they get killed, that doesn't bring your family member back to life. So often, whether the other person is forgiving, whether they accept fault or not, whether they're punished or not, doesn't really make much of a difference. You still have the pain that you have to deal with. So we don't have to accept fault, but we do have to accept the responsibility to make the changes or corrections that are needed for us to be able to be happy again and for us to be able to move forward with our life. So again, choosing to take the responsibility to react to what happened to you is not accepting fault. Those are two different things. So sometimes people won't want to make it better because they're angry towards the other person. And there's a cliche saying, but it's true, is living in anger towards someone else and refusing to move forward in your life because of the pain that they caused you, that's like taking poison yourself in order for them to die. So you're just ruining your life. You're keeping your life in shambles. You're keeping your life less than what it could be, hoping that that person will eventually feel bad for seeing what you look like and seeing what's happening to you. That doesn't make a difference. Even if they feel bad, it doesn't change anything. So you have to decide the responsibility, you have to accept the responsibility to make those changes. Just because you change, you overcome, and you can become happy again, doesn't mean what they did to you is all right. It doesn't. But it does mean that you get to move forward with your life, despite what they did to you. So that's what you need to do, is you need to view it as an opportunity to grow. Okay? What are you most proud of in your life? Often, if the things that we're most proud of in our lives came from moments of our greatest struggle, our greatest challenge. So that's something we want to think of, is if you are in a challenge right now, whether someone else caused it to you or whether you're having to deal with it just by circumstance, so whether it's someone or something, this is your challenge now. Will you choose to remain the same and stay bitter? Or will you choose to overcome it and become better? Again, just choosing to overcome it and become better doesn't forgive the person. It doesn't make it okay for what happened to you. So don't poison your future trying to kill the thing or the person in the past. Okay? It doesn't work that way. You're just wasting more of your life. You're making the negative effect of that someone or something into your life just expand greater and take more away from your happiness. So you have to choose to take the responsibility to make the changes and corrections needed. That doesn't mean you're accepting fault. It doesn't mean you're, saying that it's okay that what happened to you or what they did. It just means that you're not going to let it ruin any more of your life. You're going to take control and you're going to take charge. So will you use this challenge to become stronger? Will you use this challenge to become something that is a catalyst, maybe, for an even better life than what you had before? Is there a way that you can get not only back to where you were, but get better than where you were? Can this be a spark that ignites something greater in your life? Often it can be. Because usually in these circumstances, we are taught lessons, our awareness is raised to certain issues, and we now have a better understanding of that area of life. And we can better apply what we know now and create a better life in the future. Okay? So I have a couple examples from me, and I figured I'd share my own. Um, Everybody is going to have different degrees of challenges in life. So I think one of the worst things you can do is try to compare one person's struggle to another person's struggle. So I've met people who've been physically, sexually abused, people who've lost loved ones at ages that were, oh my gosh, just so sad to have lost them. Like children who weren't born yet, young children, teenagers, people who've lost their parents way too young. So there are some things in life that are difficult and major struggles. And then we might have somebody who has to deal with something, what would be considered maybe a lesser struggle. But our goal isn't to compare. Our goal is to understand that everybody has struggles, and we can maybe be more compassionate towards each other, but then also we can kind of get motivation from seeing someone overcome something in their life. So one of the worst things we can do is to compare. Like I said, is sometimes you'll hear somebody say something and you're like, oh, that's nothing. I've had to do with this, and this. Well, in that person's life, it wasn't nothing. It was the worst thing they had to deal with. Your worst thing and their worst thing still feel like the worst thing. So don't compare. Just see how they dealt with it and see if there's things that you can take away and use in your own life. Okay? So I have actually been blessed to live a very, very lucky life. So the more people I've gotten to talk to as a personal trainer and gotten to see more of what's out there in the world, it makes me amazed and grateful and just, indescribably thankful for the life that I've been able to live. So, my parents have been married for over 40 years. So I got to have that type of structure growing up instead of having parents who were divorced. And depending on when the parents got divorced or like what the terms of the divorce are or could be or the conditions of them, sometimes that can create lifelong struggles for people. And I've been lucky enough to avoid that. But it doesn't mean that the struggles I've had are lessened just because I haven't had to deal with that struggle. So, I'm going to give you two examples from me. They are not meant to be compared, okay? It's just this is a struggle I dealt with, some of the thoughts I had behind it, and then maybe you can take some of these lessons for yourself as well. So, I've talked about a couple of these in the past podcast, but not too often. Is I am blind in my left eye, and I was born that way. So I've never had vision in both my eyes. So just kind of the optic nerve never fully connected when I was in the womb. So I came out blind in my left eye, and it's always been that way. Now, one thing that I always wondered, I struggled with growing up, was feeling cross-eyed. So when I was younger, I didn't notice it as much, obviously, when I was a kid, but now you can look back at photos, you can see a little bit of difference from eye to eye. As I got more aware in grade school and stuff like that, I started getting more self-conscious about it. And I noticed that it was always worse when I was more tired. Just kind of different times of the day, different situations. It would show up. And it would give me a sense of being different than other people. And often we would see in movies, somebody who's cross-eyed would be the person everybody makes fun of. They would not be the cool kid. They would not be treated well. So I recognized that at a young age that said, oh man, I'm cross-eyed. What if people treat me like that? So I would see this modeling behavior as negative towards being cross-eyed. And that's something that I allowed to shut me down for a lot of years. So I had a couple of good friends who really never mentioned it. I'm sure it came up in many ways, but they were gracious enough as friends to never really bring it up, never mention it much. And but it was still something I was aware of. It was still something I was kind of afraid of. So when I would meet new people, I would often kind of look down to the floor. I wouldn't often look at them in the eye. Um, and this extended even into college. So even in college, when I'd meet new people, I would kind of like always be kind of eyes down to the floor, never really want to look at them. When I'd greet, like professors and people who I knew that I had to have the respect of looking at them in their face, I would often not look at their eyes. I'd look at their mouth, or I'd look at their neck, or, I'd kind of like very quickly try to look away. It was something that really shut me down because without eye to eye contact, you can't usually get into a more personal conversation. I'd always be afraid to talk for too long. It was something that really shut me down a lot. And I never really experienced being bitter about it, like yelling at God about it or being mad at Him for it. It was just something it was what it was. But I did let it shut me down for a lot of years. And then eventually I realized, you know what? I've been living in the fear of that thing and being the fear of being ridiculed, but I basically traded the possibility of being ridiculed for being sheepish, kind of quiet, living a life that was different than myself. So, in order to avoid being ridiculed, I shut myself down anyhow. So I could have been shut down by ridicule, or I ended up shutting myself down by holding myself back and not being my true self. So that was something I had to choose to overcome. And I had to choose not necessarily being bitter, but choosing to let it control me. I had to make the choice to live my life regardless. So if I go ahead and I expose myself and try to look people in the eye, I've had moments where I've like looked at people in the eye and I'll see them kind of shifting left and right, left and right, left and right. And I've even had to tell sometimes people, I'll point to my good eye and say, it's this one. And then they'll just kind of chuckle a little bit. And that does come up. That's, it's kind of like a bummer that has to come up, but it comes up. But that was something that, in the grand scheme of things, like if you look at people, I've met people who've been born without arms, or people like there's videos of people of a whole myriad of physical limitations. So being blind in my left eye, but still having my eye. I mean, there are people on this planet who would, give anything to have just that limitation. So it took me being more exposed in life to seeing what other people had to struggle with and realizing that, yes, that was a struggle for me, but it could be worse. And that helped me kind of accept it. And then also recognizing that the fear of it made me live a lesser life than I should have. So just taking control of it, it might still be there, but I can be more of my true self. So that was something I had to choose to overcome. So another thing I had was when I was real young, I had to have surgery on my throat when I was a baby. And it led to me, I had a birth condition where it led to me basically having like one good sleeping position. So I have to sleep on my stomach with my face to the right. That's the only way my throat opens up. So for years and years and years, I never really recognized it as being abnormal. But normally in like a 6 to 8 hour night's sleep, I would get up 3 or 4 times. Often I'd wake up, once or twice throughout the night, kind of choking a little bit, coughing, my heart racing a little bit. And it would be signs of what we consider being sleep apnea. And I remember I actually went and took a sleep apnea test. I scored the highest score possible that they actually track. I got a machine and the machine did nothing. So we found out later on that it was basically due to that surgery when I was younger that I have to sleep with my bed on an incline. And that incline allows me to have my throat more opened up due to just kind of body positioning and whatnot. And then also by having to sleep on my stomach, often what was happening was at night, the pressure on my stomach would push stomach acid up into my throat, and then that's what I would choke on throughout the night. And I never really noticed it, but I remember being, 16, 17, and having dentists yell at me for grinding my teeth And I was like, I don't grind my teeth, and my teeth don't even touch, and it never really made sense to me. And I would have, dentists tell me that in my teens and my early 20s. And it took until I got to kind of an area of people with greater knowledge and greater experiences to where they could tell that the wear and tear on my teeth was universal. It was all over my whole tooth, not just where I would be able to grind. So it started figuring out more and more as I got older that I was having this acid reflux type issue, paired along with the fact that I could only sleep in one position, paired with the fact that I had the breathing issues. Um, it basically led to me realizing that for my whole life, I never really got much sleep and I never got good quality of sleep. And I remember I used to joke with my mom, who her and I share this thing that like you're basically just tired all day. And I used to tell her, I said, everybody has something. So I always knew that regardless of what I did or didn't do in my life, I was tired all the time because I never really got good quality of sleep. So, like for example, in the sleep apnea test, they said that I only slept about 60% of the time that I was in bed. So if I was in an 8 hour sleep, I was probably only getting, between 4 to 5 hours of actual quality sleep. So it just led to me being tired all the time. But I realized in my early 20s that that was just me. I was just tired. So I could either use being tired as an excuse to not do things, and then I would just never do them, or I could do them and be tired anyhow. So whether I didn't do them, it didn't save me from being tired. I was still tired anyhow. So I had to learn to accept the fact that I had to just do the things I should do in life, the things I wanted to do in life that would have helped me achieve my goals, and then I was just going to be tired the whole damn time anyhow. So not doing them didn't make me less tired, so I just had to do them tired. And now that I've kind of learned this later in life, I realize that's probably a huge contributing fact to why I've had 17 muscle tears, torn 6 ligaments, and actually broken bones while training, because for my entire life I've never had really good sleep to recover from. So from my previous training, so I would sleep what I thought was 6 to 8 hours, which is the norm, and then you would train based on that norm. But out of the 6 to 8 hours, I might only be getting 3 to 4 hours, at best of restful actual sleep. So I was never really recovering well. And then since I like training, I was training, 5, 6, 7 days a week. So I was already training above normal, and then my recovery was below normal. So I remember telling my parents years and years ago, as I got to train with more and more people, this would be like 10 plus years ago. And I was like, man, like judging on other people, like I have like the worst recovery compared to all of my clients. So I remember I would like write programming for my clients, and I'm like, man, I couldn't even keep up with this myself. And it wasn't like lack of effort. I had all the effort in the world. It's just I would get beat up and my strength would go down, and I knew that I'd be susceptible to an injury if I were to try to train the way I was training some of my clients. But it worked for them. It kept them safe. They never got injured. And I was like, man, like everybody has something that they're kind of like best at or worst at. And it seemed like I had the worst recovery possible out of all of my clients. And I have a phrase that I used to say all the time, and I still say it now, is "you are not special." So some of the people listening to this are going to laugh. But it seemed like one of those cases where I'm like, I can't possibly be like the worst recovery ever. I'm not that special. So I just used to kind of yell at myself for being a big baby, and I'd try to push through it anyhow. So it turned out that that was something that was potential to get bitter about, or a potential to let hold me back. And saying, okay, well, since my recovery is crap, since I'm tired all the time, I'm not going to do this, this, or this, or this. But I realized at a young age I was lucky, and I just said, hey, everybody has something. This is my something. So I'm just going to be tired all the time, but I still got to do what I got to do to be great in life. I still got to do what I got to do to reach my goals, my dreams. So I just kind of accepted that that was the way it was going to be, and I had to work through that. That was my challenge. Everybody has a challenge. That was mine, one of mine. So those are two quick examples. And like I said, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at what other people have had to deal with, I mean, people have dealt with significantly worse things. And I have had worse things come up in my life, but those were the two that I was willing to share. So, but we all have challenges in our life. We all have things that we struggle with, things that we didn't feel like were our fault that they happened to us. There are things that we didn't do anything to deserve. So why these things came into our life? If you focus on that, you're probably going to stay bitter. You're going to stay less than what you could be in your life. You're going to not have the maximum happiness, the maximum productivity, the maximum significance in your life. So stop focusing on the why these things happened and start focusing on what you can do about them. How can you use this opportunity to overcome, to become stronger, to become better? How can you use this opportunity to grow? But that's the choices you have in life. When faced with challenges, when faced with bad things happening to us, are you going to get bitter or are you going to get better? So think in your life right now, what challenges are you facing? What things are you trying to address every single day? Okay? Stop focusing so much on the someone or the something that caused that to happen to you. If you focus on that, you will stay bitter. And if you've been focusing on that, how long have you been focusing on it? How long have you been focusing on the fact that it wasn't fair, that you didn't deserve it to happen? And during that time, has anything gotten better? Has anything improved in your life by focusing on the fact that things aren't fair in life? By focusing on, so and so deserved this more than I did? Has any of that thinking made it any better? Chances are it's not. You've stayed in this angry state. You've stayed in this broken state, refusing to get better, refusing to focus on what can move you forward, and instead focusing on the past. During that time, chances are nothing has gotten better. So how much longer will you wait? How much longer will you let that someone or something hold you back from living your best life? Okay? So you have a choice in the matter. Chances are you're choosing at the moment to be bitter. You're choosing to let that thing hold you back when you actually have a second choice. And that choice is to get better. So that's the choice that you face. When bad things happen to us, we have the choice to get bitter or we have the choice to get better. I hope, pray that you choose to get better. Okay? And if there's any way we can help, please reach out to us. Our email is brutalironjim@gmail.com. Okay? So when faced with bad things, don't focus on who's at fault. Don't focus on whether you did or didn't deserve it. Move forward and focus on how to get better in life because of this. How to use this as an opportunity to grow and become your best self. Okay? And we're happy to help if there's any way we can. brutalironjim@gmail.com. If you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Brutal Iron Gym. Also, if you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. So this podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. And you can tell us at our email, brutalironjim@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.